Hey, welcome to the Dr. Jimbo Love Show. I'm here again with my co-host Seth Matthew, and we are at Brothers Bar and Grill at the Shops at Northfield. Let's talk a little bit about last week. We're going to do a college segment right here. And the big news, of course, this week is Ed Orgeron is out at LSU. Boy, he kind of faked us out. I really thought that Florida was going to come out and just absolutely hand LSU a loss. And it just, LSU showed up. And you can see in the SEC that there is such parity. You can never really tell week to week unless you're talking about the Alabamas and Georgia. They seem to be the ones that are out,
Well, and I'm surprised. I know they had to let him go at some point, but I thought they would let him finish the season at least. You look at all the work he's done for them in the past.
Oh, no. He's finishing the season.
Oh, he is finishing.
Yeah,
okay.
he's agreed to part ways at the end of the season, and I'm sure they have a pretty sweet parting gift for him. But, Ed Orgeron, I never would have guessed that the guy loved the women as much as he loves women. I guess after the national championship game in 2019, where Burrow, of course, won, he either had videos of him in bed with two different women, or I don't know what the deal was, but he obviously really was taking advantage of his fame. And what happens in the SEC, if you win, a lot of that can be forgiven. But they have not played well since then. What is their record since then? It's almost right around 500 since and that just doesn't cut it in the SEC.
And that's the crazy thing, though. The SEC is one of the toughest divisions. You look at it, with all the conferences and all the teams, SEC, on probably more than any other conference, has two teams in that top four all year round.
Exactly.
And that's out of over 100 teams. So that's just crazy.
Well, we wondered, with Florida, how beat up mentally they were when they lost to Kentucky. That was a huge loss for their program, and maybe it did affect them going against LSU. Maybe they overlooked LSU. I don't know.
Yeah.
OSU versus Texas. Seth thought that Texas was going to come back and win after their really high-scoring loss to OU in the Red River rivalry. What happened with Texas, do you think, last week? What did you see?
I think the biggest thing with that game, the quarterback for Oklahoma State didn't really win it for him, but that running game that Oklahoma State had overpowered Texas.
Very much
and
so.
Texas really didn't come out shooting and firing like they did in the OU game. And with that, Oklahoma State was able to control the clock, was able to run it down. They got a lead, and Texas started faltering near the end. And you just can't do that against a top-ranked Oklahoma State team.
Absolutely. And so we split on that game. We looked at the UCF versus Cincy, and Cincinnati took care of business and handed one of their it's the AAC conference, the American Athletic Conference. And those two teams last week, as we pointed out, both teams have been in the championship game in the last 4 years. One of those teams has been in the championship game. So it really was the cream of the crop for that league. Going forward with Cincy, we're just going to have to see strength of schedule whether or not they're going to be able to hang on to a 1 through 4 spot. We know Georgia's very firmly at number 1.
Well, that's the big debate right now. If Georgia goes undefeated and Alabama goes undefeated and they meet in the conference championship, let's say Alabama upset it, can you really kick Georgia out on a 1 loss when their strength of schedule is so much stronger than Cincinnati's? I even debated Michigan State. I don't think they're going to finish undefeated. But if either one of those teams do, another Power 5 conference, Big Ten, are you going to hold out a top team that's undefeated against a Cincinnati team that doesn't really have a good strength of schedule?
No, and it's such a disadvantage if you're not in one of the Power 5 conferences. Your strength of schedule just is so hard to maintain,
What you're seeing right now, teams are recognizing that. If the college football playoff doesn't expand, Houston and I believe 2 other teams are hopping out of their division, and they applied to be part of the Big 12, I believe, now that OU and Texas are leaving.
Yeah, there's 2 spots there. Of course, they're coming over to the SEC. We looked at Kentucky and Georgia, and again, Georgia just completely outclassed Kentucky, who was undefeated at the time. And as you can see, Georgia's just in a different whole echelon of talent. That Alabama, if it does come down where we have Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC championship, and it looks like we will, barring some kind of upset of Alabama or Georgia, which Georgia I really don't think has anybody left that's going to challenge them now that Kentucky's behind them. Both of us had UGA winning and going away.
Yep.
TCU versus OU. Seth, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about OU since that is Seth's favorite team.
OU handled business like normal. Caleb Williams already only played 2 games and he's already in the Heisman talks. Now, I don't know if it's ever happened in the history of college football where someone missed 6 weeks and now they're talking that he could rise to the top and be the Heisman winner of this year already. He's right now sitting at over 600 yards. He's already thrown 8 touchdowns. I think today he's even going to put up more. You can see him in the 1,000-yard mark, and that's what's taken a lot of quarterbacks 6 weeks to even get to those numbers, and he's going to do it in half the time.
It's hard to believe, and he's a true freshman, folks. True freshman. It's just amazing how these kids are playing and how they're preparing in high schools, at these elite high schools and these elite camps. They're stepping in as freshmen at 18 years old, and they're studs. Tennessee versus Ole Miss. Again, that was Lane Kiffin coming back to his old stomping grounds in Knoxville, and Ole Miss took care of business. Tennessee is just struggling, and we'll be talking a little bit more about Tennessee later on today. So let's get into what we're going to talk about today as far as our lineups. OU and Kansas are already off. They're playing right now. Again, I can't see OU having any problem with Kansas. Kansas is going to really, really just struggle. And I bet you it's a 3-touchdown lead by halftime.
Yeah, the Vegas spread on this is over 30 points, which is just huge. I believe it's 39.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is just a huge spread to even overcome. Oklahoma has dominated Kansas for many years now. This is actually their longest active winning streak against any team in college football, and I believe we're at 17 right now. The overall record for Oklahoma is they've won 78 games. The Kansas is 27. 16 of those came, but 8 of them came in that first 8 years of the program, and 16 of them have happened since 1930. So they've only won 9 times in like the last 90 years.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen again
No,
today.
not at all.
Barring maybe a blimp accident where the blimp comes down and hits on the OU field and takes some of the players out. Iowa State versus Oklahoma State. Again, you've got Oklahoma State with their 2. This is going to be a game about 2 different running backs that are going against each other. You've got Warren for OSU, who had 193 yards last week, and you have Hall from Iowa State, which had 197 yards last week. So watch, and let's just see which team can shut down the other running back, and I think you're going to see a distinct advantage. Seth, what do you have about that with the OSU versus
So the biggest thing is I keep bringing up Vegas because I always look at their odds, but Vegas actually favors the unranked Iowa State team who's 4-2.
By a touchdown, right? Did
No,
you tell
only
me that
by
yesterday?
Yeah, by a touchdown. It is by 7.
That's amazing.
Now the crazy thing about this game, Oklahoma State hasn't lost. They're 8-0, or wow, they're ranked 8 in the country. But the big thing is I don't think people believe in Oklahoma State yet. Even with that win against Texas, everyone is still kind of iffy on them. And the big thing will be the running back for Oklahoma State. Can he even get going? Because the throwing game isn't going to win it for him. But Iowa State has one of the top defenses in stopping the run. They have given up the least amount in their division from the run game.
Interesting.
So it's all going to come down if they can get the run game started.
I
for
really
Oklahoma
think
State.
so. I think that we can really watch, and at halftime, if we look and we see the yards gained by the running backs, we'll see which team establishes their run game.
And another big part of that for Iowa State is their offensive line is top in the Big 12 as well. They had given up only 6 sacks in 6 games.
Wow.
So the protection's there, and their quarterback doesn't make mistakes. Oklahoma State's quarterback is prone to turn the ball over. So he's really got to protect the ball today if he's going to put Oklahoma State on top, because this has big implications for the end of the year. If they go undefeated, they run into OU at the end of the year, who will most likely be undefeated, and whoever wins that final game, doesn't matter. Well, it does matter for the top four, but they have to play again right after that, because they're both going to play for the conference championship after the season.
Oh, they have a regular season, and they could be playing back-to-back.
Yeah, so they could play back-to-back.
That's right. Because what is that rivalry? Is it called Bedlam?
Yep, it's the Bedlam.
Wonderful. I love college football. Just amazing. The game that was featured on College Game Day this morning, if you were watching on ESPN, again, it is Oregon versus UCLA. As you saw, Bill Walton was just making the picks. It's amazing. Bill Walton had got through his LSD fog and actually could sit down. He sounded halfway decent today.
Yeah.
I have a hard time listening to him when he's doing a basketball game, because he talks about everything but actually the game that's in front of him. But anyways, it's going to be tough. You look at the running back duo for UCLA. Oregon not strong on run defense. So I myself personally picked for UCLA. I think they're going to win at home. What do you got, Seth?
So again, UCLA is favored. Oregon's the ranked team. UCLA is not. The big matchup here is going to be the linebackers of UCLA. They're really good at stopping the run, and Oregon really relies on the run in this one. But it is a familiar face that Oregon's going to run into today. Is Chip Kelly is now the coach of UCLA.
That's right.
He has not beaten them yet. He is 0-2. I want to say the Ducks are going to win. They've only lost once, and they've played really good the whole year up until this point. Now, they have a couple injuries that could play a factor in this, and UCLA is getting better as the year goes on. So it'll be interesting to come out. I say that this game is separated by a field goal, and I give it to the Ducks.
Okay, good. That's interesting, And again, another thing, he mentioned Chip Kelly. He was at Oregon from 2009 to 2012.
With Marcus Mariota, I believe, was there at that time, too.
Yes, he was. And Oregon was just really, really establishing themselves as a brand, changing the uniforms every week as they've continued to do. Let's talk about Air Force versus San Diego State. It's a game that's happening just down the road from us. And, you've got Air Force, which is 6-1, and San Diego State, which is is undefeated, 6-0. San Diego State's coming off a pretty tough double overtime victory over San Jose State, whereas you've got Air Force coming in, who beat a very traditionally tough Boise State team last weekend. I'm going to go with Air Force. I think it's my upset special. I think that Air Force, with their option, is going to be more than what San Diego State can handle. What do you got?
So this is the age-old tale of, does defense beat offense? Because Air Force is mainly a running team. Now, San Diego State, and they are the number one in all of college football in rush yards per game. But now you're going to run into a San Diego State team. They're number one overall in stopping the run. Last week against San Jose State was the first time they've ever gone up over 100 yards rushing. Otherwise, they hold opponents to under 60 yards rushing all day. So it's going to be a back-and-forth game. I think we're looking at a low-scoring game. Air Force is at home, so I'll give them the slight edge for the upset. But San Diego State, again, is ranked. Air Force is not. It's really hard to tell, especially when you get these military schools, on how they come out. Navy always has like a weird team that they beat people that you wouldn't think, and they play a different style of football. So I'm going to give the edge to Air Force.
Very good, yeah. And the Air Force, again, is, if you've ever gone down and watched a game at Air Force, and any of you guys locally, if you get an opportunity, that stadium, there's not a bad seat in the house. It's nestled up against the mountains, and I'll tell you, Air Force always plays tough at home.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a great game. I'm so tempted to get in my car and just drive down there. If it wasn't for all the traffic and the Gap project, I probably would attempt it, but I'm not in the mood to sit in my car for 2 hours on the middle of I-25. South Carolina versus Texas A&M. The only reason we really are highlighting this is because looking at these two teams record-wise, you'd think it was going to be a lot closer game than it actually is. South Carolina comes in at 4-3. They ended up beating a pretty tough Vandy on a final drive by their graduate assistant second-string quarterback. Very interesting. He'll be starting for the rest of the year. Doty is out. He's injured, and he had an operation on his ankle. What have you got for them?
Yeah, so for that game, I have that Texas A&M, they're going to win this game. But it's going to be a low-scoring game. They're going to keep going. With Texas A&M, it's going to be just kind of a dominant.
Yeah, go ahead.
They don't open at 11
o'clock.
Sorry
about that.
But yeah, no, Texas A&M should handle South Carolina. The only hope for South Carolina here, though, is you do have a newer quarterback in, and then when you run into Texas A&M, they haven't performed all year. They did have that huge upset against Alabama,
yeah.
But they didn't look good against CU at all.
No.
So I mean, it all
Which
depends.
team is going to show up today?
In college football, that's the best part. You never know who you're going to get.
Yeah, and one thing that should be noticed is that South Carolina is 109th as far as Division 1A offensive production. And I believe you have them down as what, 73rd or 74th?
So you're 74th in stopping the run, and you're running into a Texas A&M team that's near the top in rushing offense.
Right. So I think you're going to see. I predict that Texas A&M is going to win by at least 2 touchdowns, and I'm hoping. Of course, as you can see, my Gamecocks, I'm hoping for them, and I'd love to see a big upset, but I don't think it's going to happen. All right, so this brings us to the last game that we're going to feature this week.
More.
We've got 2 left. Okay.
We forgot about Clemson and Pitt.
Oh, geez, let's go talk about Clemson and Pitt right now. Seth, what have you got?
So the big one here is Clemson obviously isn't the same Clemson of the past, but they're getting better as the year goes on. But they're running into a tough Pittsburgh team, and I don't think I've ever said that in college football in a really long time. But Kyle Pittman is up there for Heisman Candidate of the Year, and he is playing out of his mind. And this Pittsburgh team is getting better and better each week. I think Pittsburgh squeaks out this win against a tough Clemson team.
I do too. I know Clemson struggled offensively all season. That's been well documented throughout the season. You got to remember that Pitt has beaten Virginia Tech 28-7 last week. They've also beaten Georgia Tech and a Tennessee team. So, and also too, they're playing in the friendly confines of Heinz Field. That always is a big help for a college football team. You'll see Clemson on the road again, 2nd week in a row. The next game, of course, we'll talk about USC versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame is still in the hunt for a bowl of, the New Year's 6 bowls. They're ranked 13. USC is coming off their bye week. What have you got?
USC, you never know what you get with them. Notre Dame is consistent for the most part, minus their 1 loss. Teams have held in there with them for the first half, but the better team always prevails in the second. Notre Dame played a tough Wisconsin team. I believe it was within a touchdown all game, and they ended up winning by over 21. So I could see this game starting out kind of close. USC might be able to, coming off a bye week, be rested, hang in there. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame's going to win this. My guess is by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you'll see Notre Dame roll through pretty comfortably as well. We want to welcome you to come down here to Brothers Bar and Grill at the Shops at Northfield. We're sitting out here on the patio, and they have a huge patio. Of course, you can hear the games. You can hear it in the background. User-friendly, great food, comfort food. And Seth, tell them a little bit about what we've got going on for Halloween and the party you have next weekend.
Yeah, so next weekend on the 30th, we are throwing a Halloween costume contest, giving out a $100 gift card to the winner of the contest. Also, I believe we have a $50 and a $25 thing for 2nd and 3rd place. And we'll find some judges out there, probably some of the staff members, and just come dressed up. It'll be a fun time. It's on a Saturday, so there's going to be some good college football going on. And it's overall, we're just going to throw the best party and have the most fun.
Yeah. And it's wonderful to remember here that if you come in and you want to watch a ball game, Seth will get a TV that you can see for your team. Mm-hmm. The earlier you get here, the better pick you have, of course. But come on down and check us out. The other thing we want to talk a little bit about is Pro Comfort Medical and the Medicare approved company, where you will get 3 sets of orthotic inserts as well as a no-cost shoe. Pro Comfort Medical for your needs. And if you have any of your folks, your parents, your grandparents, diabetic, people that have maybe hammer toes or problems walking, please let us know. Call us at 303-519-5579 and ask for me, and I will help you out as much as I can. So that brings us to a pretty good overall. What are your overall feelings today? Again, it's kind of an odd week. It's an odd week in the pro game as well, and we'll be talking about that in our next segment. What is your overall feeling? What games do you really think are going to be the closest games of the ones that we featured, or any other ones you may want to mention?
So, I'm coming into this week with optimism. I mean, you're walking into a bunch of ranked teams not favored by Vegas, so they're projecting a lot of upset in the top 25 that could shake a couple things up. Because right now, even though some of these teams are sitting at 23 or in the 20s for rankings, this all determines what their bowl game is later on. Now, I don't see the Oklahoma State being an upset, but it's going to be a close game. Iowa State has upset OU when they were undefeated. So they could do the same thing here, and it's in Iowa State. It's in conference. They play every year, and it's always a tough matchup. So that's the game I'm really interested in today.
Yeah, Ames, Iowa is not an easy place to play in. And, with Iowa losing last week, and that's something we haven't mentioned, number 2, Iowa lost last week.
To an unranked
Purdue team. I mean, just go figure. They're rolling along undefeated. Looks like they have control of the Big Ten, the Big 12. And what happens to them as they just fall off a cliff?
Yep.
How far did they drop, Seth?
They dropped below Penn State now. They are where I believe they dropped all the way to 9, maybe even farther. I know Penn State, even with their loss to Iowa, they did lose their quarterback, so they probably will drop farther later on. But they're sitting at 7. They're still got a shot for Penn State.
Sure. Penn State could sneak in. We'll never know what. Again, I cannot stress that I am so ready for this expansion of the Final Four. And my feelings are they going to go all the way to 12, or are they going to go to an 8 kind of situation? It's still up in the air, isn't it?
I think the big debate is right now is how many teams do you have to let in, so when you get these undefeated Cincinnatis, people don't feel like you left a better team with a stronger schedule out. So they're going to have to look at how often does it come out that these undefeated Cincinnati, Boise State back in the day, UCF,
Yep.
How many of these guys are around that are undefeated that haven't played as tough as a schedule as Alabama or the Big Ten schedule that they're allowing into these playoffs?
And it's unfortunate because just the way these Power 5 conferences work, I mean, the strength of schedule is totally in their favor. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to it. And I would love to see, kind of what Division I AA had done with their tournament. And they have done that for years, and it really works out well. You see teams, like the James Madisons and the North Dakota States.
Yeah.
And there was a team out of Michigan. What was the team out of Michigan that did pretty well?
Is that Appalachian?
Or App State. App State did pretty well.
They just had another big win this last week by beating an undefeated team, or not an undefeated, a top-ranked team again.
Right. Well, good. Well, come on back. We'll be talking a little bit pro football here in our next segment. But in the meantime, get your stuff together and come on down to Brothers Bar and Grill. We're at the shops at Northfield. Come on in and say hello to Seth and I. We'd love to have you. Until next segment, we'll be right back.